In this lesson, we will start creating the structure of our project. Our root directory, Game Store, will be our project, which we will post on the repository on GitHub. Therefore, everything we will be doing in this course will be stored in one repository. In WordPress, there are two important sections where we, as developers, should write code. This is the theme territory, which is the themes folder in WordPress itself, where we should place the theme code, and the plugin, where we should place all the code related to some functionality to take advantage of this opportunity and use these two directories. In one repository, we are building this system. So let's now focus on creating folders for themes. In the root of our project, and next to it, we'll create a folder for plugins. In addition to themes and plugins, we will need another folder for the master plugin in WordPress and the following syntax. We can create a folder named MU in the root, the plugin, and store the stoves there. The code will not be interpreted as plugins, but will be loaded first, even before the plugin is loaded. A regular WordPress plugin, when we install it, it needs to be activated additionally by going to the plugin page and activating it. So here's the thing. Plugins, master plugins, do not need to be activated. They are loaded by default, as it were. We can put some important functionality there, and we will specifically create a directory for this purpose. You have folders of firms, of course. We will place the directory of our starter theme, which we are currently generating. This will be full-site editing, a directory with the theme folder plugin. We will store plugins, our own that we develop, as well as third-party developments that will be used in our project. The next step is to somehow inform our system and point to these new directories, because in regular WordPress, these folders are not located in the root of the project. Here, I will specifically open a folder with WordPress in a more familiar way, and you know that it has a directory called WP content. And in this WP content, there is a folder for plugins, themes, and sometimes MU plugins. It's not here right now because this is a default installation. So, guys, technically speaking, we now need to kind of merge so that this folder for themes points to this folder, and the same goes for plugins. That is, so I can work with the code in these folders, but they are interpreted the same way. So we will proceed by analogy, as we did with the volume for the Docker compose file. Remember, in the previous lesson, to ensure our database wasn't lost, we set this path from our working folder from here to the server folder. More precisely, not to the server, but to the one that Docker creates. And it runs in the virtual infrastructure, this MySQL, and like this in that infrastructure, this is the path to MySQL. We do the same for WordPress, meaning in our working folder it creates WordPress. And consequently, here we can proceed as follows. We will create a directory for the theme. The themes folder is this path, and we add a slash further to and a slash, and then set the path on the server, this var in HTML. And then comes this path to the directory itself. WP content slash sepam to this directory. With this line, guys, we did nothing else but specified WordPress, and the code that I will write in this directory, you kind of upload it there, meaning interpret it in the virtual machine. The same line is needed for plugins. So for the directory plugins, and its path also goes to WP content. Only this directory is plugins in, and for us using plugins is the same. MUI plugins and the path MUI plugins. Also, don't forget the slash here, since we specified such a path here. We duplicate it here. Great. We have taken the next step, and now we will generate a full-site editing theme for this directory. When working with classic themes, the underscore generator is very popular as it generates a starter theme. For full-site editing, there is also a similar generator. Here is the path. I will attach the link to the lesson. I use it when generating a template for a starter project. Let's fill it with our data. Our project is called Game Store. Author, enter your username. Link to the author. Then the link to the theme will be the same as the description of the start film type. We specify basic, which means we can replace the brand colors now or leave them for later in the JSON file. We will change this in principle. We leave everything by default, just specify the name of our project here so that the directory has the same name and click Generate. Here, our project has been generated. We need to navigate to our projects directory. Remember, our project is located on the desktop. Here, I open Game Store and open the newly created FEMS directory. Here, into this directory, I need to drag our generated theme. I close the archive, switch to the editor, and we see in our FEMS directory, Game Store appears. These will be the files of our new project. Let's run this in the browser. Since we made changes, we need to recreate and generally run Docker. So, if you haven't done it yet before starting the lesson, I opened the Docker program. You should open it now as well. I run the Docker compose command with the D option to recreate and apply the E changes I made. In the browser, we go to the site localhost, port 8000, and we see a blank page. Unlike before, when it was disconnected, the site now shows nothing. Let's figure out why this is happening. Remember, we created a folder called Films and instructed Docker to look there. So it should look in this directory instead of where it used to look, which was in the WordPress folder. This means that previously we had a different main template, and now we've added a new one, Game Store, but WordPress doesn't know about it yet. So let's go into the admin panel, WP admin, and log in. As far as I remember, this is the password and login we set. Great, we've logged into the admin panel. Now let's open the site in a new tab. Now it should indicate that the required template is not active. Yes, it indicates that this template is activated for the site, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because Docker is already looking at this firm and it only sees Game Store there. There are no necessary templates. We will go into Appearance and activate the newly created full site editing template. Let's refresh our page on the site. Now, the new template has loaded. Wonderful. We've done half the work. Now, guys, in this directory, we only have a new folder. But if for some reason we delete our container, either manually in the program or by dropping it with a command and then run it again from scratch, not just recreate, but actually create them anew, then all the default themes that are in WordPress will also be there, right here, next to our Game Store folder. Same goes for plugins. And the plugins will be empty because in the default installation there's nothing. So what am I talking about? If I open this directory now, we have these files here. Plus the index.php here are these directories, and this index.php, they will be created in your directories. Therefore, when we are working on the lesson regarding the GitHub repository, it's important not to forget to create a .gitignore file and write these default directories in there so they don't get pushed to our repository as clutter. I will probably demonstrate this to you now. I will delete our project. Let's write Docker compose down directly in the console. This will stop our containers. Now the site will stop working and we will delete it now. With the command .docker compose up v, we will now delete both the container as a whole and its data. The only thing is I made a mistake with the command. We need down v, not up. Now both the container and the data are deleted. In principle, they were deleted simply with the down command. The site, of course, has stopped working. And now we are essentially simulating a new installation. From the previous installation, we have these two directories left, database and WordPress. We didn't create them manually, Docker created them for us. We can keep them, but technically they won't be in our repository. They will also be in our Git in your file. We will create it, after all, in this lesson, so as not to forget. So, let's do this. Select these two directories and delete them. We don't really need them right now. You can also not delete them, and then Docker will simply overwrite these files. But essentially, we are now simulating a situation as if we downloaded these files from the repository onto a new computer and would run this project there. We are left with only what we created in this lesson, namely the game store folder, our new files, and we start building the Docker container from scratch again, from the Git. Everything is created, we go into the films folder. And look guys, as I told you, we have additional directories appearing, which I told you would be in the plugins. The same additional directory is recreated. These two cats, of course, and the MU plugin is empty, and because in the default installation, none of this is present. That is, I wanted to demonstrate to you, if you launch your project somewhere else, and these directories will be generated for you so you don't get scared, this is normal. This is because we specified this path. It takes the default from WordPress and places it there. Let's go to the site and reinstall it since it crashed. We deleted the database. At the same time, I'll take the opportunity to set an easier login and password. Root. I'll log into the admin panel, go to themes, and activate our new template. Super. Let's create this Git in your file. But before that, let's initialize a Git repository in our directory. I think you know what Git is. Git should be installed on your computer. In Visual Studio Code, this is done very easily. I go to this icon and click on it, this button, and it initializes further for me. In this project, all the files in the directory that it is going to add are marked in green, but I need to remove something from here. Therefore, in the root of Game Store, we create a new file using as the name guide. Ignore. This is the configuration file. And we need to specify everything that we won't need to send to the repository in the future. That is, everything that is kind of dynamic data, trash that we don't need in the repository but is needed for the site to work on the local machine. So for me it's usually ds. Store always comes first if we're working on a Mac. This type of file is generated. Next is this folder srv and everything in it. Therefore srv. This way we disable everything that will be here. Next, more precisely, not everything. Remember, we created custom mini in this folder. Here they are marked in gray. This means they will no longer be considered by Git. But we need this file in the repository because we specifically added it. Therefore, we will write an exception. Directory srv custom.ini. Wonderful. Now it will turn green for us. Super. Let's go in order from the plugins. We don't need Akismet. Therefore, I'm removing the Acus.net folder. This hello PHP from the plugin is also not needed. Index.php. Okay, these are files needed for security. They are empty, so we leave them. In general, if you create any directory on a WordPress site, always place inside that directory index.php. The file is empty. This is necessary for security if some servers are not configured very well, so that a person doesn't get a list of files from a particular directory through a browser link. So in the themes folder, we are interested in this directory, this one. This one. And it seems there are no others here. And now these sort of working directories will only be on our current machine. They will not be sent to the repository later under any circumstances, because it's junk. what's important to us is in the repository, this game store. In this folder, we will work with these files, my work. The same applies to plugins and plugins. Next, let's create a repository on GitHub and send this to GitHub. The name, I use game store. The description quality is WordPress and Canvas. I will make this repository private and create it. Next, I will link my local repository with this repository. I need to go to the terminal and run this command. And I will send to the server everything we have done in this lesson. On my server, there are only the files that are needed, which are edited in the directory. And our service is only a minicast, meaning nothing dynamic that is created by Docker or any compiler is here. Plugins, similarly, themes, similarly, and so on. That is a clean project that will only store what we add here. So we will work with the game store folder, and it will be stored with us. But at this step, we haven't finished working on our framework, because in the WordPress territory, themes are only the territory of styles, and HTML, CSS, sometimes JavaScript. These are the technologies we will use to write files in the themes folder. And for writing functionality, we will use the pledges directory. Therefore, in the next lesson, we will continue working on our SAR framework. So far, we've only done half the job. The only thing we don't have, unlike the local version, is the MU pledges folder, because it's empty. But in the next lesson, we will create the necessary plugin for it, which will be placed there. In principle, I am concluding the current lesson here. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye, everyone.